Simon, in thinking about planning for preaching, I think in other videos we've talked about preparing to preach, but let's think about planning to preach a little bit. I know Spurgeon was somebody, I think I remember reading lectures to my students, and he said text selection was a big agony for him, even up to the day before he preached. Is that the approach you would recommend, or would you say, you should know what you're preaching a year ahead? How do you think about these kinds of things?
Yeah, I think Spurgeon was a genius, but he tortured himself in a way by waiting for some fish to bite, almost in an experiential way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't think there is a fixed rule on this. The Scripture doesn't legislate. Some people will prepare a year ahead because they will decide that they're going to study the book of Isaiah for the whole year, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
My own policy was, for 30 or 40 years, was to plan a 4-month preaching roster. So we would have a preaching roster come out 3 times a year. And in Sydney, we work from January to December. So it's pretty well January to April, which is Easter. And then we would have May, June, July, August. And then we would have the September to Christmas. This allowed us enough flexibility to make a change if we thought that we should really be addressing something. But it also meant that we knew where we were going. We didn't have to agonize about that. Within the preaching roster, I would say there needs to be a good rotation of Old Testament preaching, Gospels, epistles, and topics. The topics are the most difficult because you have to get your head around the whole theology. But you don't have to, literally and slavishly go old, gospel, epistle, topic. But it's keeping all those in mind so you don't fall into the trap of only preaching the Gospels or only preaching topics. I think those are helpful principles.
What flexibility in your life of preaching have you given to that? Like, does an event happen in culture and then you've sort of changed, you've thrown in a variable sermon series? Or I heard Lloyd Jones from time to time would even be getting ready for Sunday morning and change course. Have you had that in your experience, and what influences those kinds of changes?
I read somewhere that Charles Simeon of Cambridge would not allow the newspaper to dictate the pulpit. So he felt as though the pulpit should be dictating to the world. There may be exceptions to that. I have to confess that when 9/11 took place, we were in a series in 1 Corinthians, which I'd planned for 16 weeks, 1 chapter a week, and we just went ahead with it. And I think we probably had about 50 people turn up, utterly bewildered that we were going to be looking at 1 Corinthians 6 the day or 2 days after 9/11 took place. Was that a good thing? Well, in a way, we taught the people that we weren't going to jump when the world news said jump. But on the other hand, it may have been a little bit insensitive, and I wouldn't say a pastor should have a rule about it. Perhaps to get the good Anglican balance, I would say generally I wouldn't be jumping with the news, but there may be a time where it is a loving thing to do.
And so you would say consecutive expository ministry is the sort of steady diet of your pulpit ministry, and that you would want to prescribe that to others as much as possible, but also to be open to changes as time goes on.
The consecutive exposition, of course, opens you up to all the issues.
Right.
And it is amazing, it is supernatural, it is wonderful how you can preach your way through the Scriptures and find that the chapter for next week is utterly profitable, good for teaching, correcting, encouraging, training, way beyond what you could have imagined. The timeliness of that, and even in my young preaching career, has certainly proved powerful.